You have questions? We have answers. This is Jane Muller.
And this is Ken Muller. Welcome to our show. Today, Jane, it's showtime.
Yes.
Yes, so we're going to talk about this showing time process, how to prepare your home for showings, and what you can do and how the whole showing time process works. So basically, we're going to now talk about the stage where your house is on the market. And basically, there's what we use in what a lot of agents in Central Jersey use, and what RE/MAX First Realty uses is showing time. It's a third-party company that handles all the appointment requests. So basically, any licensed agent will call the showing time number to request an appointment, and then the appointment center staff from showing time will get in touch with the owner or owners via their preferred methods. It may be phone, text, email, whatever the owners prefer. That's how it's set up. So
once again, that's case by case. Some traditional agent or company doesn't want to use the professional company, which is a paid service. So they still do the traditional. Either the agent do themselves or the office does the appointment scheduling. In my personal opinion experience, I think our company RE/MAX uses showing time that's much more effective. For example, like we're here now in studio, and if anyone want to make an appointment, they can just call showing time. They can schedule online. They can call the showing time center, so make appointment. The showing time appointment center, they check the agent to make sure they up to date with the licensing, with everything before they make appointment. So there's additional secure, much more secure service. Say, for example, right, I'm the listing agent. If someone call up, said, I'm Joe Smith, I want to show a house, I work for ABC company, I wouldn't know. I said, okay. But in this case, showing time, I actually will get their license, get the information to verify it. How do I know that? A few times the showing center called me up and said this person has a license but not in this MLS would be okay. So that's more additional security of the showing.
Right. And secondly, it also respects the privacy of the owner, because with showing time, the owner's phone number or email is never given to anybody other than the professional appointment center staff. They'll get in touch with the owner. So the buyer's agent, the buyer, of course, nobody other than the showing time staff, and the list agent, of course, has the contact information for the owner. That's private. So
I'm glad, Ken, you mentioned that, because quite a few times, right, now it's a seller market. The thing goes so fast. As soon as you hit enter, within 10 minutes, the owner got a showing request via text. They call me. They say, Jane, how do somebody weird contact me via text? Is that a trap? I said, no, that's a showing time. How do I know they're real? I said, they are real.
Right. And normally what we do as a list agent, what a good list agent will do, you will before the house goes on the market, you'll sit down with the sellers and explain to them, go over the showing process. There may be certain days and times when they don't want to show the house, or they may say that we only want to show the houses on weekends, Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. because they may have conflicts during the weekdays, or whatever the case may be. So it's very important to be in communication with the sellers and make sure you know what their preferred showing time. Some may say any time is good as long as we have 2 hours or 4 hours advance notice. And they have to explain to them that if any showing request that comes in, they can accept it, or they can decline it, or they can propose an alternate time. So it's not like they have to accept every request. Of course, the more flexible you are, the better for the whole showing process, and the more opportunities your home will have for showings. But certainly, it's understandable that if people want to see your home, they'll respect that you're not going to be available 24/7. So you can certainly put restrictions on the showing times.
Yeah, especially for the young family, they have a pets, they have a young children like infant, they have a nap time, which we are familiar with, and also tenant. So always good to discuss the showing to understand. Otherwise, if we put in showing, and then there's a lot of stress for everybody, because the showing agent would want to show time, and then the requested and the the occupant, either the owner or tenant, can't do it and keep declining, it make more stressful for all party. So if you know your schedule, sometimes like I just recently leased a home, the seller work from home. So what we did was Monday to Friday, anytime after 5 p.m. So, they finish work at 5, so 5 p.m. that's fine. And Saturday, Sunday, whole day. So in that case, the showing agent, when they see the listing, they want to make an appointment, they go into schedule. Automatically, the morning until 5 p.m. is blocked Monday to Friday. So it's easier for them to understand what's work for the seller.
Right. That all goes to open communication. The more you can put out there to the buyer agent and to the public as to what times are permitted to request showings, the smoother it's going to be. The smoother the whole process is, both for the owner, because they'll get less. They won't. If you know that certain times are not good, they can block it out, so you won't even get any requests for those times that are not good for you. So that's the whole part of the showing process, to make it as smooth as possible for the owners and the occupants of the house.
Absolutely. And a lot of time, right? I mean, if there's any changes, for example, nowadays, right, I just had a text this morning. One of the tenants said that they waiting for the tax result. They in close contact with someone. So if that case, right, and we can just adjust the showing accordingly. One thing I really want to make everyone understand, right? And if that's the case, right, owner can call showing time anytime to modify the showing instructions. Say, for example, this week, if you have some changes at work schedule, say, just happened you have a 3 days away, so anytime can show rather than after 5, that 3 day you can call showing time. They can adjust it accordingly. However, if it's a tenant, normally you still can call, and then showing time will call listing agent to verify, because they want to make sure, that's what the seller and the listing agent agree, because in case the occupant doesn't want to show, they just want to be sure. Your question is, how does the showing time know it's an owner or a tenant? Because when we put in the information, there's a box. We check the owner. So if we check the owner, that means the owner get feedback via email, and they can call showing time to ask anything or change any instructions, no problem. But if we check tenant, and you still can call, say, why my 5 o'clock not here? Why my 6 o'clock not here? I'm just, should I cook? Shouldn't I cook? You still can call. The showing agent still going to reach out to the buyer agent to find out for you. But if you want to change showing instructions, most cases they will take down the information. They call you listing agent.
Yeah.
Yes.
And with the whole showing process, the point is, we often get, a lot of times the sellers ask, they said, how many showings do I have to do? Or there's no magic rule. The basic rule of thumb is you want to be as flexible as possible and accommodate as many showings as you can, of course, because that gives your home the most opportunity for it to be seen. But it's understandable that there are going to be times and conflicts. Everybody has a life besides, getting their house ready. So there are going to be times where you're going to have work conflict, personal conflict. So there's no rule of thumb about how many showings per week, but just to be as flexible as you possibly can. The more the better is usually the rule.
Yeah, I did have some clients saying like, if I decline, it's a seller market at the moment. If they want to see, they will come back. Answer is yes or no. Because even though, especially in the seller market, the buyer most likely will come back because not many home available. But in the buyer's market, that's more vital. Show as much as possible.
That's a very good point, because sometimes buyers are coming from a good distance. They might be 2 hours, 3 hours away. They might be from New York State or out of state, another state. So they might only be in the area for like a given afternoon for a window of time. So if they miss that day and that window of time, they may not come back, or they may just pass. But again, that's more applicable if you're in truly a buyer's market. Now, in the seller's market, it's probably not as critical as you said, Jane.
Yes, but still, be flexible. I always tell my client, the more showing translate more possible offer. The more possible offer push the price as well as the term more favorable to the seller. So the more work we put in, hopefully it's going to worthwhile, and the result is going to show that.
Yeah. So now the next question comes up is basically when you've confirmed an appointment, a lot of times the sellers will ask the question, do I stay or do I go? Should I stay or should I go now, as the song goes? And I think the answer to that question is usually the preference is that the sellers are not present when the buyers show the house. They want their privacy. They feel more comfortable. I mean, if it's absolutely necessary that you're working at home, then you can probably possibly work in your home office and just, give them the opportunity to roam the rest of the house. But the general rule of thumb is that the sellers should not be home when the buyer and the buyer agent are in the house. You can always rest assured that whenever there's a showing, it's going to be with a licensed realtor and with the buyer, and then it's all through a confirmed appointment. No one's going to show up without it. But again, if you can vacate, that's usually the preferred way to handle it.
But once again, that so depends case by case. If it's a bad weather or anything, you're more than welcome to stay home or sit in backyard. But my advice is don't follow the buyer and buyer agent. That may make them more uncomfortable. I know sometimes sellers say, who knows the house better than them? They can't wait to introduce the home and very excited, tell them about it. What you tell them about it is great, but it may not be what a buyer looking for, right? So that buyer agent and the buyer to have their own leisure to see the house. And another thing is I would suggest, right, I would think if the seller can leave the lights on for the showing agent, that's going to be do two things. Number one, that's going to make less contact. Now it's COVID, right? You don't want people to touch everything. So if you keep the lights open, some closet door you slightly open a little bit, so the void avoid contact. But most importantly, the agent go in, they have to looking for lights, especially in the basement, right? And we want them to focusing on the buyer. We want to make sure the experience is positive. If the home well lit up, they come in, they see it, they will, emotion-wise make it more welcoming. Mm-hmm. I did had a house many years ago. We were going to show the house like 7 o'clock, 7:30. That was almost in fall. It's dark, and the buyer came early. They drive around the community and to see the area. Just before the appointment time, they suddenly see the whole house lit up. It's a 2-story luxury home, 2-story light up. And then later on, they saw the seller, took the car and drove off. So the buyer automatically feel the extra effort the seller was putting in. They really like it. When they go in, they really like the house. They purchase the house. But case by case, I would think if you can leave the light on, that would be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
right. And so now, last show we covered about getting your house ready for pictures. Now we're going to assume that the appointment's been confirmed, and now we're going to talk a little bit about getting your house ready for the showings. Again, the photo day for the house is something that we covered in quite detail the last show. You don't have to be quite as ready for the showings, but we're going to get into some of the things that you should do, before the actual showing.
Yeah.
Right after this short break, we'll be back. Okay, welcome back. So we're talking about showings. We've gone through the appointment process and how that works, and now we're gonna assume that you have the buyer ready to show the house with their agent. And these are some helpful things you should do to your house to make sure that it shows in the best way possible. The first would be it should be relatively clean and clutter-free. It doesn't have to be like the photo day where everything is removed from the counters and the sinks. But if you can have the dirty dishes away, if you can have the dishes stowed in the cabinets, if you can have the trash cans, not full, maybe empty. The house
so avoid odors.
Avoid odors.
Yeah.
That's very important. Also, the beds, I would think it's always nice if the beds are made at least, and so it looks the house.
You would think it's common sense, right? But Ken, how many times, right? We go in and the bed is not made. It's not. Sometimes they have young children or they leave in a rush, and that could happen. But just bear in mind, obviously you still live there. We understand, but the more the home presentable will give a good impression to the buyer.
Right. Also, odors. We said for the photos, it's not so critical, the odors, because the pictures don't capture the odors. But obviously, you want to try to make the house as odor-free as possible. So that would get down to things like cooking. If you can avoid cooking a meal before the showing, so that there's no odor lingering in the house. It also pertains to your pets, your furry friends.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that there's no pet odors. Some people are allergic to that. The litter box, if you have cats or the dog, you should try to make sure that all the pet supplies are stowed away. You don't want to see like a house with the dog food lying on the kitchen floor with in the dog dish. It just kind of.
Sometimes you never know if the buyer, like us, the pet lovers, dog lovers, and they may say, oh, that's normal. But certain other people may have a different feeling. Once again, buying a house is a lot of emotional component to it, too.
Absolutely, right. We spoke about this for the showings. Open the blinds. You want as much natural and light as possible. Turn the lights on. Light, open, and bright is a good theme to live by.
I have to say, a long time ago, I showed a home, right? When we go in, as soon as we go in 2 minutes, the buyer said, let's go. I said, you haven't seen the whole house yet. And she said, no, I don't like this house. I said, why? It's meet all your criteria. She said, oh, because too dark. I said, can't be. This house is not dark. There was a curtain. So very thick curtain. When I opened up all the curtains, the house was as bright as you can be because the back was facing south. That has to be bright. So a lot of time, right, leave the curtain, especially the thick one. And I understand every owner or occupant have their own preference. Some people don't like it a little bit darker for sleeping purpose. But when your house on the market in the morning, just have a habit to open up all the window, let the abundance of natural light flow into the house.
Right. That makes it, and it makes it easier because even though the showing agent may, first of all, it's good to open it up because it's less hands. Otherwise, the showing agent may end up trying to open the blinds, which could, so it's less involvement of the showing agent, less touching of things, and then how to open and close your blinds and shades properly. So it's best if the owner can do it in advance of the showing. It just avoids any problems that the showing agent would have in opening and closing the blinds.
Sure. And also the items, your personal items, right? My advice is you always put away some jewelries or small items, right? I mean, luckily all these years we really didn't have any incident. But sometimes the children, when they come, right, it's hard to say if they see something cute. It's not like they stole or anything. They just think it's cute. They may put it in their pocket. The showing agent and parents may not see it. We had a case a few years ago. The owner had a very nice chess set. I told them put it away, but owner said it's just chess set. It's really not much valuable, and it's look good on the table. Sure enough, a month later, they called me. They said they couldn't even remember when. Just one piece was missing. So that was like 5-6 years ago. Thank God we caught not many showing, not like now here. So many, they didn't have an open house yet. So if open house, we wouldn't even know, right? And then there was like 8 or 9 showings for the past 3-4 weeks. So we called every agent asking, and none of them said they said they didn't see it. But at the end of the day, it's not much money, but it's just disappointment. If there's any valuable or even the small item like the chessboard, the kids just think it's cute, maybe curious, right?
Right, and certainly the valuables because you don't want, because oftentimes families are coming, so kids may inadvertently touch something, and it's even though the buyer agent is present and with the family throughout the showing, it's a child can quickly just pick something up before you have time to warn them. So of course, if you have the valuables or anything sentimental that you don't want to, you want to make sure that that's tucked away somewhere that it's not accessible to the public.
Absolutely. Another thing is like now it's a spring, summer is coming, right? I understand a lot of our client like room is a little bit warmer, but when we show in the house, I would highly recommend to set up the temperature. So pretty much about 70 degrees. So this case, when the buyer came in, especially later on, next few months going to be summer day, when they come in, they feel cool and they more likely going to stay inside longer.
Right.
So,
Psychologically, even though people may not want to put their temperature controls, to optimal, but it's best that the buyer agent feel as comfortable as possible. So obviously the temperature is a big thing. If they're too hot, too cold when they show the house, it's just going to psychologically, it may make them have a bad impression of the house. So absolutely keep the temperature at a comfortable setting, 68 to 70 degrees.
that was funny. 1 year ago, we had a owner there. I think the AC was like a 25, 30 years old. That was like 100 degrees that day. And the AC was very low. The owner set up, 70 degrees. When the buyer came in, the only thing the buyer agent remembered is this AC worked very well.
Right, and that's another good thing, especially as the weather is getting hotter now that we're in April. If you have the AC set to a comfortable temperature, that'll give the buyer the impression that the HVAC is working properly as it should be. So that's another positive thing. So they'll have in their mind that, they don't have to worry about the AC unit. And likewise, in the wintertime, if the heat is working sufficiently warm, then that'll give the buyer and the buyer agent that warm, fuzzy feeling as well.
Yeah, and I had a lot of clients said, "Why do I have to pay winter the utility if there's nobody live there? They already moved out." I would say yes, because first of all, sometimes the storm may happening and the temperature suddenly drop. We don't want the frozen pipe; it's not really worth it. And keep the house in the regular, temperature is definitely help with the showing. When they come in, right? In the winter, they feel the warmth, and in the summer, feel the cool. That's and the lighting and natural light and the lighting in the room. That's emotionally and entice the buyer, so they feel more comfortable.
Right.
To us welcoming.
One thing we didn't cover yet, Jane, is the showing window. Typically with showing time, and again, it's up to the list agent and the seller to come up with the allowable window. Normally there's a window of showing. It could be anywhere from as long as 2 hours to as short as maybe 15 minutes, where typically, because buyer agents are showing buyers multiple homes, so they can show your house, but they can again, it's going to be dependent upon the seller to set the allowable showing window. Typically, I think an hour is a time where the showing could be from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And what that means is whatever the allowable window you have set, that means that the buyer agent and the buyer could arrive at 2 o'clock, or they could arrive at 3 o'clock. That's again, or if the allowable window is 15 minutes, let's say from 2 to 2:15, it means the buyers and the buyer agent could arrive at 2 p.m. or they could arrive at 2:15 p.m. So that's between the seller and their list agent come up with what they think the allowable window is. If there's in this seller's market, typically the allowable windows are much shorter because you want to accommodate as many showings. You're not going to block out an hour window for any given buyer and buyer agent. You may have the window as a typically 30 minutes would be a good thing. But oftentimes sellers ask us, they say, when can I come back to the house? So it's very tricky because we don't know if the buyer, if it's a half-hour window and it's like a 2 to 2:30 half-hour window, the buyers and the agent could arrive at 2 o'clock, they could arrive at 2:30. And if they arrive at 2:30, towards the end of the window, they could stay 10 minutes, they could stay 20 minutes, they could stay 45 minutes, right? So that's where it gets very tricky. So there's no given time where we could say to Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you can come back to your house at this time, because it's really dependent upon the arrival, and everything is contingent because every buyer and buyer agents are busy. They're showing multiple homes. So
depends on the traffic.
So there's a lot of variables, and there's no way we can say for sure. But you should probably, if the showing window is a half hour, you should probably allocate, let's say you have a half hour from 2 to 2:30, you should probably be out of the house by 1:45, 1:50, and plan on not returning till about 3 p.m. or later.
Yeah, and also this is really common sense, Ken, right? I mean, I'm glad you brought it up. A lot of sellers said, well, they have a half an hour. Why, they still not here yet? Sometimes the agent, they showing multiple homes in multiple township. So this really depends on how fast, how slow the buyers go through each home. Also depends on the traffic. Sometimes we typically, during the pandemic, we allowed half an hour. Why? Because we can't duplicate the showing, so we only allowed one family at a time to protect the owner and the visitors, right? But in the past, we allowed overlapping. When we allowed overlapping, sometimes I put a 2 hours window, because if you put too short, like half an hour, they may not get here. And then it will be nightmare. They got the call, the owner got to say, where are they? They say they are delayed. So in the regular time, normally showing window is about an hour or 2 hours. Nowadays, we try to have more people have opportunity, so we put half an hour.
Right, and we don't allow overlapping showings because we still are in the COVID thing. And also we should cover that, I guess, with the showing process. Our team, we always, for any listing we have, it's still a mask mandate for inside the house, and it's limited to one party showing at a time, no overlapping showings. That's just still because we still are in the COVID. We're still implementing the COVID protocol, especially respect that people have different sensitivity to the COVID, and we want to it's just added protection for anybody going in your house because every owner has their own. We just figure let's err on the safe side.
Yeah, and we also provide the shoe covers. So, for the visitors to wear.
Right,
yeah.
Disposable, they take with them the usable shoe covers. That's right. Now, we should talk about the cancellation process. Unfortunately, sometimes there's a confirmed showing. It comes from 2 to 2:30. Let's say it's a half-hour window. The buyer and the buyer agent don't show up. If it's and they may typically what the buyer agent should do, they should call showing time. They should cancel. Then if they cancel, the showing time appointment center will get in touch with the owners by their preferred means, whether it be phone and or text to let them know. Or email, right. But if the owner, sometimes what happens is even though there is a showing window of a half hour, sometimes what could happen, the buyer and with their agent could arrive 10 minutes or 15 minutes outside the showing window because of traffic and hold up and because they got delayed at prior showings. And so you have to give them a little bit of overlap.
Yes.
Allow.
And sometimes it's not often, but it happens again and again. And the buyer didn't show up, despite the showing agent confirmed, but the buyer just didn't show up, didn't cancel. So that happened a few times too. In that case, the buyer agent already at the property outside. They may call showing time cancel, they may not. But it's really common sense. If the owner come back home, say there's a car there, they're still there. So you just probably go for another ride.
Right. And oftentimes we have that with owners that they come back and then they see the car there, then they drive around or they go for or they walk. Sometimes owners don't want to drive their car, so they'll leave their cars with the house. And if it's a nice day, they'll go for a walk. Or we've even had owners that were big bike enthusiasts. They took a ride around the block a few times because they went for a long bike ride.
Once again, today we help the owner to prepare the home. The more showings equal more opportunities.
Right.
The better prepare the home, create a better result.
Absolutely. Well said. So we're out of time, but I think we covered everything adequately on the showings and hope everyone enjoys the rest of the weekend. We'll see you next week.